right, guys. Well, let's switch focus now. And as we flagged at the top of the show, the other major news this week, and to say major is something of an understatement, is that of Ange Postecoglou taking over at Tottenham in the Premier League in England. There's naturally been a lot of excitement on this side of the world. But Martin, over in the UK, we saw, of course, how things went when he took the Celtic job, or even in the build-up, even when he was being linked to the Celtic job. We saw the same things basically right throughout, still continuing now at Tottenham. What's been the reaction there on the ground, and was it surprising, or was it as you expected?
Well, like any other part of the world, media drives the perception of the country or the world, and we've obviously been discussing about how the media has treated Saudi Arabia against the USA. It's very similar in this case in terms of it's an unknown quantity, and the immediate reaction to an unknown quantity is fear and skepticism, and that's generally happened when Ange Postecoglou was linked with Celtic and as he kind of joined. I think it's slightly changed this time, which I'm been pleasantly surprised about how much the media has bought into the fact that Ange Postecoglou is obviously a brilliant manager in his own right. He's bringing in this positive attacking football that people will actually start to enjoy. And I think that's fed through from experts or so-called experts, as you would mean, and former managers and so on. So the fact you've got kind of what we perceive in the UK as potential dinosaurs of this kind of area, like Harry Redknapp and Martin O'Neill, coming out in support of Ange Postecoglou as the new face of kind of football moving forward. All of a sudden, people have bought round to that idea. The same level of knowledge is probably there. I think the fact that people were still sceptical about Ange Postecoglou because they didn't see him play in Japan are still the same people saying how good he is without actually seeing it at Celtic. So I don't think there's an increased awareness of it. I think there's just a different narrative coming in. With any kind of part of the media, sensationalism sells, and he's either going to be a flop straight away or he's going to be a superstar success. And I think that's the narrative that they've played with at the moment. We've spoken about it before in terms of how he'll do at Tottenham, but I think the fact that he's got that kind of presence straight away at a club that aren't doing so well at the moment can only benefit from him.
Well, just quickly coming to you, it's got, I think, maybe lost in what's happening in Saudi Arabia, but it's a seismic moment for Asian football. I mean, I think one of the most important moments in the history of the game. You know, a coach that was groomed and honed and developed their skills in an AFC nation. Well, it wasn't at that time, but it is now. Going on to what many people consider to be the pinnacle of the game. Obviously, the Premier League is popular in Saudi Arabia as well. Was this something that made news? Was it something that that even people in Saudi Arabia, maybe there's been a little bit of a disquiet down the years between Australian clubs and Saudi clubs, but that a coach from the region has reached, the very top level of the game?
It is, yes. I think obviously a lot of people outside Asia maybe do not really appreciate the significance of this throughout the continent. Probably a big part of it is because maybe Australia is not culturally viewed as part of the wider Asian region for people who are not involved in Asian football, I would say. However, that impact is there. Obviously, people know Ange Postecoglou from 2015 Asian Cup, from what he's done with the Australian national team, and obviously that's something that I would say the first lasting impact of Ange on the collective imagination of fans in Saudi Arabia. This is where, all right, so he's the guy from there, and then from then on, people have obviously followed him, and the fact that someone from the same confederation has come in and has actually made it all the way there, it gives hope to a lot of people. It gives people to say that, what, this path is open to us. And I think another manager who is, in my view, someone who I'd love to, I think, of the same quality, and I think I'd love to see him follow on the same path of Ange, is Pitso Mosimane, who is the South African, who's obviously won the African Champions League twice, and then moved to Saudi Arabia, brought Al Ahly back to the top division, and is now looking to make the next stop. And he has been outspoken about how managers from outside of football's traditional power base in Western Europe and Latin America are treated and not given the same opportunities. So I think, for me, I think this is seen as an opportunity for managers from outside those areas to actually look at and say, yes, there is an opportunity for us too.
And I also hope that can be the case, even filtering down to within the AFC itself, because I think we still see the same thing. Even we look at various nations. The tendency is to bring in a Brazilian, the South American coach, an Eastern European coach, rather than looking within the continent itself. For players to step up the ladder. Michael, coming to you, you obviously know this well, as also having been in and around this Premier League thing for a long time. So how much pressure is there on Ange? How much leeway is he going to be given if if they start badly and they lose whatever 5 out of their first 6? The drums will be beating. I'm not accusing you of being a Spurs insider or anything, but how much support do you think you'll have internally if things are wobbly to start?
Well, I think things are wobbly even before he walks in, and that's the big problem that he has, the big problem that he faces. And I know there's a sense that Ange going into a club that is already not necessarily rock bottom, but not in a great place, gives him the opportunity to come in, clean house, and reestablish a new culture and take things in the right direction. And he certainly has that opportunity. But I think when he was appointed Celtic manager, I remember us having a conversation on the pod about how it would go one of two ways. If it all clicked into place fairly quickly, or if people were patient enough with him to allow it to click into place, that he would do well and he would prove himself. And I think it's similar. It's similar in this regard. I think the fans are going to have to be patient with him because there is a massive job to be done at Tottenham. But they've proven themselves with Nuno Espirito Santo's time in charge after he took over at the start of last season, not the season just completed. Patience was not something that they were prepared to. They didn't give him a lot of time, and Nuno, unfortunately, was fired fairly quickly, and then obviously has gone on to Al Ittihad and done very well there. Ange could find himself in a similar situation if he's not careful. There's not a lot of patience in the Premier League in general. Daniel Levy, the chief executive of Tottenham, is known for being a difficult character in terms of how he operates at any number of levels. But look, Tottenham are in a place where they haven't won a trophy since I can't remember when. 15 years, when they won the League Cup under Juan de Ramos. They're desperate to win something. If he can go in, take control quickly, get a couple of good signings in, clear a lot of the deadwood out, establish a new culture very quickly, I think he's got a chance of winning fans over. I think the issue will be English football is very different to the Scottish Premiership. Scottish Premiership is a two-team league. If you're working with Celtic or Rangers, you're already half the battle's already done, maybe more. But Steven Gerrard showed last year when he went to Aston Villa, having been successful in Scotland with Rangers, that success doesn't mean anything in the Premier League. And he really didn't do a very good job at Aston Villa and has since been replaced by Unai Emery, who has taken pretty much the same squad and done very well. That's not to say Ange won't. That's not to not compare Ange as a coach to Steven Gerrard. I think Ange is a significantly more competent coach than Steven Gerrard has been or ever will be. I just think it's going to be interesting. I think Ange has it in him if he's given the time to be able to do a very, very good job. I certainly think he has the capability to end Tottenham's trophy drought if he's given 2 or 3 years to build a team and start to be successful. The challenges that you face as a coach of any team in the Premier League outside of Man City, Liverpool, Manchester United, maybe. I'm saying that as a Man United fan with fingers crossed that the ownership actually sorts themselves out. And a couple of other clubs, maybe Chelsea and Arsenal. To be coming up against those 4 or 5, it's really tough. It's probably the level of competition in the Premier League is such that it's probably the most competitive league in the world at the moment. It's a very tough job, but Ange has confounded expectations before. He's proven himself more than capable at every single level that he's worked at, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he does. I think it's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, of course, including in a salary cap league as well, where I think that's the toughest league in the world. If you win in a salary cap league, that's really down to coaching. I'll tell you what I think is going to happen. I think he's going to win. I think he's going to win something with Spurs in year 2, and then I think he's going to move to Liverpool and take over from Jurgen Klopp, lifelong Liverpool fan, of course. Ange, so you can clip this, Paul, and we'll come back to this in 3 years. For you, what classifies as as a success for Ange?
It's a really interesting question, that one, because as Michael just said, the challenge in the Premier League is, Tottenham are classed as a club in the Big Six, despite having never really won anything. Is the 5 clubs basically above them? If you assume they're 6th of the Big Six, then it's the 5 clubs above them that have, certainly in a couple of cases, significantly more spending power. And we've seen over time in a lot of leagues that generally spending power equates to success. Not all the time. There are outliers to that, but more often than not, we're seeing that, the more money you spend, the more likely you are to succeed. So he's already hamstrung a little bit in that regard. So I think it's going to be really interesting to sort of quantify what is success in Tottenham, because is it realistic to aim to win the league? We've seen other clubs do it. Leicester was the fairy tale, but that was a 1 in 100 event. That's not something that gets repeated. So it's not completely outside the realms that he could do it. Tottenham, was it 2019 that they finished second, made the Champions League final. So it's not outside the realms that, they can finish right near the pointy end of the table. And, with a great coach, with Ange in charge that we think he is, he'll certainly put them in that position. But I think in the mind of the Tottenham fans, that'll be really interesting to see what they consider as a success as well, whether they think, whether they're aiming for a title in all of this, whether that's realistic. I think he needs to probably win some silverware for it to be deemed a success. So whether that's a repeat of the League Cup or winning an FA Cup, I think that would be one marker of success. Getting them back into the Champions League would be another marker of success, and doing well in that competition doesn't necessarily mean making the final again, but making it, further into the knockout rounds would probably be considered a success as well. So you can be successful without, winning trophies. And I was having that discussion with someone recently in regards to something else, in terms of, success is subjective, really, depending on, I guess, what your initial expectation is, and compared that to the outcome that you eventually get to. So it's going to be fascinating and compulsive viewing. I certainly hope, and I'm certainly no Liverpool or Tottenham fan, I'm an Arsenal fan, as many people would know, but I would love for your theory to be proven correct, that he does move to Liverpool to take over from Klopp, because if he gets the Liverpool job, it probably means he's had to have some semblance of success at Tottenham to be in the running for that. So it would be great for Ange that he would have achieved some success, and then to coach at a club like Liverpool, who is a vastly, vastly bigger club than Tottenham. If we think coaching Tottenham is remarkable for an Australian coach, then coaching Liverpool is on another stratosphere. So it's certainly going to be interesting to watch over the next couple of years. As an Arsenal fan, I don't know how much I can fully get behind Tottenham, but I'm going to have maybe a little pinky toe on the bandwagon, and hope Ange does well.